Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a very, very good game, and I just didn't see it at first. I actually bounced off the first game like 2 or 3 times. I tried to play it, couldn't get into it at all, and then the second game, at first I didn't really like it, but now I'm about 20 hours into the game. I absolutely love it, and in this video I'm going to talk about what it is that I think makes Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 so special. If you enjoy this video and you enjoy this kind of positive video where I'm just talking about games that I'm really enjoying, don't forget to like and subscribe and let me know if you'd like to see more of it. As an aside, I was given a free copy of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, but I wasn't sponsored to make a video, they haven't paid me anything, and they haven't asked me to say anything in particular about the game. And I should probably get it out of the way first. I understand that the director of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Daniel Vavra, maybe isn't the greatest guy. You know, he was a big fan of Gamergate and he seems to have a problem with people caring about representation and diversity and stuff like that. And that sucks. But for the sake of this video, I'm trying to kind of detach the game from the people behind it. So, what is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2? If you haven't seen it at all yet, it's basically a medieval first-person RPG, and I'm sure there'll be somebody chiming in to say, oh, it's not really medieval times, it's actually some other time period. I think most people know what I mean when I say medieval. There's castles, there's horseback riding, there's sword fighting, all of that kind of stuff. It's set in the early 1400s in Bohemia, so kind of Eastern Europe. And this very much is a sequel to the first Kingdom Come Deliverance. The game actually does a really good job of catching you up on a story if you don't know the story of the first game. It wasn't like a super complicated tale or plot or anything like that. But basically you're playing as Henry, who was the son of a blacksmith. Some terrible things happened at the beginning of the first game and he was trying to kind of recover from that. At the beginning of the second game, he's in a kind of better position. I'm not going to spoil anything really from the game while I'm talking about this. We're not going to go into the details of the story too much, so don't worry. If you're planning on playing it, no spoilers here. Now, when I say it is a first-person RPG, you might be thinking of games like Skyrim or Fallout, you know, those Bethesda titles. It doesn't really play like that. It's got elements of a kind of immersive sim in it and elements of survival games, and I think the big mistake I was making when I first started playing this game was that I was expecting it to be something in particular. For a long while I thought, oh yeah, this is trying to be really immersive and realistic, and then I would try to solve problems in a way that I probably would in real life, and it just didn't work. You know, the physics engine, the way you interact with the world, isn't detailed enough for you to be able to think about the game in that way. And sometimes I'd think, oh, it's like an immersive sim, so there's like systems and stuff like that, like a game like Dishonored. And you think, okay, maybe you'll be able to kind of manipulate the world using these systems. But it doesn't really work like that either. There are some systems, but it's not really designed around you being able to manipulate them all that much. And one thing I was happily surprised by is that it's not really a survival game either. Like, you do need to eat and you need to wash. Actually, that's quite a big part of the game. But it never really puts much of a barrier in that. Like, food is pretty abundant. You can find it everywhere. You can buy it everywhere. It's never too much of a problem. And you don't need to be constantly eating. Like, if you eat something like some meat that's, you know, reasonably filling, that'll keep you going for a long while. So while you're playing the game, you're not often worried about where you're going to get food from or where you're going to sleep or anything like that. It kind of, that side of the game is very, very easy. So I've been listing all of the things that the game isn't. What actually is the game? What's the gameplay like? Well, it's a bit of an odd one. It feels to me a bit like playing really early RPGs. So when you used to play RPGs, in the earlier days of PC gaming especially, a lot of the first part of the game was you working out how the world worked, and you working out kind of what the rules are, what systems you're allowed to engage with in the world, and then you can start kind of getting immersed in it based on that. And I think that's how you should approach Kingdom Come Deliverance. As I said, it's not super realistic. There's lots of weirdness. Like early on, I was fighting off some wolves and I was swinging my sword at them. And even though the wolf was like right at my feet and I was swinging the sword at them, I wasn't making contact. And that really annoyed me at first. I was like, oh, this is rubbish. It's a terrible combat system because that's not working. But over time, as you play the game more, you realize, oh, okay, that's just kind of, I guess, the game's way of showing you that you're not very good with a sword, or a sword's not very good in this situation. Maybe a smaller weapon like an axe or a club would be better for hitting something that's at your feet. The combat system actually does end up being quite detailed, like sword fighting's really interesting. The way kind of plate armor is really good against swords, but if you've got some kind of club that you can bludgeon something with, then that tends to work really well. A lot of fighting, especially against heavily armored people, is much more about tiring them out than it is really about just stabbing them. Although actually quite early on you do learn that you can just stab them in the neck, and that pretty much deals with everything. But the idea is there that there is logic in the way the combat system works. It's not realistic and it's not kind of intuitive really, but once you get to grips with it, then you kind of understand, okay, this is the situation that I want to be able to get into, this is how I want to try and approach this is how I want to get better at it. Like, you start delving into that, and that's true of pretty much everything in the game. None of it's intuitive, none of it's realistic, but it's got depth, and it's got a kind of certain immersion where once those things aren't barriers to you anymore, once you start understanding how speech checks work, you know, the fact that when you start off, you're basically an idiot in this place, you don't know anyone, you don't know much about anything, so you're going to say a load of stupid things. You end up learning, it's probably better just to keep your mouth shut at the beginning until you learn a bit more. And that's kind of interesting in itself, that's immersive in itself. It's like, oh, okay, I'm in a strange world, all of these other people know way more than me. Just because my charisma score says that it's like 15, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually really, really good. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be able to trick people, like you probably could in other games. I think with a lot of games, they kind of set you up to always be the hero, to always be winning and doing well. So, you know, if you're early on faced with a charisma check, there's probably a way that you can do that. There's probably a way that you can get around it. In this game, it's just like, oh yeah, like, hardly anyone would be able to do that because it's just very, very unrealistic. It's almost as if you're not meant to bother trying. And once you start seeing the game like this, you realise it's pretty consistent across the entire game how this works. Like, you'll sometimes go to a keep or a castle, and even though there are fully fleshed out rooms, like every room's there'll be bedrooms, there'll be toilets, there'll be a cellar, there'll be lots of chests with stuff inside them, and the stuff inside the chests will be kind of appropriate. You know, in a bedroom it might be full of cloves. If it's in someone's like alchemical lab where they're brewing potions, there'll probably be a load of herbs and stuff. If it's in the cellar or the pantry, there'll be a load of food inside. All of that stuff exists, but it's not really made for you, it's just there. Like, if you wanted to go back when you're kind of really skilled at sneaking around and lockpicking, you probably could go and rob an entire keep blind and take loads of stuff. But it's not like it was placed there for that. It's just placed there almost just in case. A good example is what I was doing on stream today, where basically I'd been arrested and my friend had been arrested. I needed to try and break them out of this keep, and I was being told to do some random jobs around the castle. I started off by just doing what I was told, doing the jobs, thinking, oh, the game's probably going to lead me towards being able to break him out. It's probably going to point me in the right direction and then set up a series of events so I can break him out. And as I did those jobs, I realised, oh, well, that's not actually what's happening. It's just saying, yeah, like, you're meant to do jobs so you can do jobs if you want. But if you want to break your friend out, you probably need to start breaking the rules. You probably need to do something different. So I started sneaking around, sneaking into places that I wasn't really meant to be, distracting guards, ended up finding a dagger, so then I could start stabbing some guards and killing guards to get what I wanted. Then I had a slight problem that I'd actually murdered quite a lot of people, even people that weren't really getting in my way, so then whatever I did ended up causing a load of alarm. People were constantly on high alert because they'd found some corpses in the castle, and that caused loads and loads of other problems for me, which made sneaking around much more difficult. Maybe I could have just talked my way up there and managed to sort of earn people's trust and get up there. Maybe that could have worked, but instead I did it through murdering a lot of people, and I was getting to the point where I thought, okay, everything's absolutely gone wrong, like, I've probably kind of ruined this save for myself. And then it turns out something else happened where somebody comes back and suddenly everything's kind of forgotten a little bit and everything's kind of reset. Like, what people think of me is massively changed by something that was completely out of my control. And that kind of, in a way, could be seen as frustrating. You know, in a way, it's like, oh, these game systems haven't worked the way I would expect them to work in a video game. But in another way, to me, that's super refreshing. That's super interesting. That like this world feels like a world that's going on without you. You're not the most important person to basically anybody in this world. And sometimes you just have to kind of roll with events. You just have to kind of do the best you can and hope that you'll struggle through. And struggle you most definitely will. At the beginning of the game, like I said, you don't know anything. You don't have any gear, like you're literally in your pants at one point. You don't have anything. You have to sort of earn everything. And the start of the game is very, very difficult. Everything seems insanely expensive. Everything feels like it takes a bit too long to try and get, you know, even trying to find a decent sword or something like that seems incredibly difficult. And then trying to maintain any gear that you get, if you get something good, is super expensive, or you don't have the skills to be able to repair and craft stuff yourself. So it just makes everything feel really tough. Now, as the game goes on and you start unlocking some skill points and putting some perks in, you get some better gear, you get a bit of disposable money, you find somewhere, you know, someone who will let you stay at their house so you've got a bed to rest in, you get a couple of other things back. Then the game gets much, much easier. And I think that's probably the thing that's going to put a lot of people off, is that first, I would say 5 hours or so of the game is incredibly punishing. Like, you can be walking from one town to another and some bandits will pop out. And even if it's like one bandit with a club, he's got a decent chance of being able to kill you. Later on, you'll have armor, maybe you'll have some friends to back you up and stuff like that. Then a single bandit on the side of the road won't be a problem. But at the beginning of the game, that's something you probably just want to run away from. So it's kind of like the game forces you to unlearn a load of stuff you know about video games in order to be able to just keep on pushing through and keep on progressing. And kind of trust in the game, because the game is designed in a way where you will get sort of given stuff, or you will get led towards stuff that will make you more powerful and make you more comfortable and make the game easier. You can get all of that stuff earlier if you're smart, or if you're lucky, or if you do something kind of a little bit tricky. Then sometimes you can get those kind of benefits much, much earlier. Like, for example, getting a horse. There's a few different ways you can kind of luck into getting a horse early, or you could just break the law and steal a horse from someone and get one that way. Eventually the game will give you a horse, but you could get it like 10 hours earlier if you're just willing to kind of set that goal for yourself and be like, yeah, I'm going to go try and find a horse. Then that's something you can do. Now, this isn't exactly a review video, but it is worth mentioning some of the things about the game. Like, it is pretty good looking. Like, there's obviously some little weird oddness, you know, light coming through trees doesn't look quite right, and sometimes some textures and things don't look great, but generally the game looks really good. Facial expressions are really good, like animations are generally pretty good, like you can tell what sort of state someone's in by the way that they're moving. That's really, really cool. And there's just some really impressive landscapes, you know, the forests and the hills, fields, all look absolutely spectacular. And the game sounds really good too. The music's great, there's lots of ambient audio, and again, you can kind of tell what's going on. You know, if you're in a castle, you can hear people in nearby rooms, and they'll often be talking about things, you know, sometimes kind of procedurally generated things, it seems like, where they'll be like, oh, that's weird, like, I thought I left something here when you've stolen something from that room, and then they'll start talking about, okay, I'm going to go look to see if they're over here, and you'll know that they're searching around. Stuff like that's really good. The voice acting's very hit or miss, like, some of it's quite good, some of it's absolutely awful. I saw Tom Graphic did a video about this innkeeper that you meet early on, who has the weirdest accent I've ever heard, and it's absolutely hilarious. Go check out his video, he put it on Twitter. But yeah, there's some oddness in here, definitely, and I think this is something that pervades the entire game. There's like an uneven quality to it that comes from it not being quite a AAA game. Like, it seems like a AA game, you know, where you have to put up with some jank. You know, some of the menus are a little bit awkward and weird. You know, like, the physics doesn't quite work properly. Characters will path themselves weird. I had a situation where I was riding with someone who's meant to be like my best friend, telling me how much he appreciates me, and then some bandits attacked us. I got off my horse to sort of try and fight them off, and he just carried on riding and talking, completely ignored the fact that I was literally being murdered right next to him. So yeah, like, there's some janks and stuff like that. But going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video, it's kind of something that you just learn to cope with, and then you can get immersed in the game. If you don't expect the game to necessarily make sense in terms of the real world, and you don't expect the game to make sense in what you've learned from other games, but you kind of learn it as its own thing, then it's super rich and it's deep and it's rewarding. And I think that's what I didn't quite realise with the first game. More than anything, this game is just refreshingly unique. It doesn't really feel like any other games, other than, I guess, Kingdom Come Deliverance 1. It doesn't feel like it's chasing any trends or anything like that. It doesn't feel like it's trying to waste your time. It gives you lots and lots of choices. It has a story that, you know, fairly interesting so far. I say I'm 20 hours in. That's not actually that far into the main story. I think I've only done a few missions of the main story. But so far it seems fairly interesting. And it's kind of, that's just something that's there for you if you want it. If you want to just, you know, go kill bandits and slowly rob and steal your way up to having the best possible armor and the best possible weapons and train up all of your skills, you could do that if you wanted. If you wanted to find ways to make as much money as possible, you can do that. If you want to get involved in everyone's little side stories and go village to village like in The Witcher or something, trying to solve everyone's problems, you could do that. It's just a very, very generous game that I feel like we haven't really had something like that for quite a long while. Like, we haven't had a game world that you can just exist in and explore in this kind of way for a long time. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think of the game if you've checked it out, or if you've got any questions about the game. Maybe you're sitting on a fence, not quite sure whether to buy it or not. Let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. And as I said before, also let me know and leave a like on the video if you like these kind of positive videos where I'm just gushing a little bit about a game I really like, because I like putting something more positive out there onto YouTube rather than just complaining about Call of Duty all the time. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.